Alright, hello everyone. Here we are back for a Golf Clash tutorial here. And this is going to be for the third tee box. Let me see if I can... Oh, jeez. Just want to highlight this third tee box real quick. And let me try to think about this. I do believe that your wood to driver line is going to be about here for a power 3 ball for this third tee. So with this third tee box, there's going to be basically two different ways that you're going to need to play this. Now, the ideal way is going to be with a rough bump. It's going to be high risk reward though. So it is a tough shot. Let me just kind of get the land zone, kind of similar to this tree. And of course, all adjustments around this tree can be very, very tough to make because you can't, they're kind of trying to hide the rings from you to be able to do this shot, which is making it harder. So all left to right winds, for instance, where you have to go over that tree, are going to be that much tougher to make. So you might have to rotate your screen, kind of in a weird fashion to be able to see the rings the way that you want. But that's typically the line that you'll want to use for the shot. And here's kind of the basic wind guide here. And what I typically try to do here, well, let me first kind of prioritize as to ideally what you'd want to do this. So ideally, you'd kind of have a rock 8, for instance. And it would be nice to see them, roll out the new update where the rock is 231 would be nice, because that'll make that club even that much better. But aside from that, we're going to put Thor Hammer 7 as kind of the next best, because accuracy is going to be somewhere around 92, 93, somewhere in there. And aside from that, we're going to kind of put a Pox 7 here. But similarly, I can put 5 and 6 right below there. The only reason these are a little bit less is because the accuracy is a little bit less. So we're kind of keeping these in priority of accuracy, but also keeping in mind, distance as a factor. It's going to be very tough to use QB in this tour, and that's one of the only reasons that I have it down this low. Otherwise, it would be up here right below rock. But being as it would be very tough to use that. It kind of just falls down. But ideally, that's what you'd want to use. And then any extra mile here is going to kind of be last priority as to something that you'd want to use. So let's talk a little bit about the spin here. So what I'll typically do is maybe about 2.5. I might crank it up to as much as 3. Even in the side wind case, what it does is it kind of helps you with distance control. You might have to just change this land zone just slightly. Keep in mind that your second hop needs to be on the fairway. So that's how you'll kind of set up this landing zone. And similarly with its 2.5 to 3, whatever, it's not a big deal. It just kind of, you need to kind of tweak your landing zone to accommodate. So you'll have to keep that in mind. You can get away with 2.5, you can get away with 3. So I'm just going to kind of write in both. And you just need to tweak the landing zone to be able to accommodate for either of those in that case. For the tailwind case, it looks like one of these got chopped off for some reason. So in this tailwind case, you want to definitely make sure that you probably have at least 3. And in fact, for this one case, I'm even going to suggest putting on 3.5. Keep in mind that with the tailwind case, this is going to be definitely a little bit tougher of a shot. So do keep that in mind. Headwind can also get challenging, especially if it's straight on. The larger the wind gets, the harder it is going to be to not push towards max club. But the good thing is since you're going to probably have Thor's hammer, a puck, and very long length, you probably can do this for most cases. The toughest thing about it is going to be perfect ball becomes almost mandatory. It's a very kind of high risk, but also, very good benefit, because if you hit perfect ball, or actually, if you play this perfectly, it's going to roll out to, a yard or two pretty much every time. And you're going to, essentially be able to hit kind of a kill shot, as opposed to, your opponent who may be laying up in the fairway. It's going to be much tougher to play that shot. But both are, still makeable in everything. So, but as I was mentioning, with these headwind cases, you might want to scale back on this a little bit. So definitely, no more than 2.5 and maybe even 2 here for this straight on headwind case. And that's keeping in mind if you can even get that option, which I don't even know. It really just depends on how large that wind gets, and you'll want to, right at the beginning of your shot clock, just kind of scan up and make sure, if you think you might be going 10 rings, make sure that you have the 10 rings ahead of time to, so that's sometimes the first move that I'll make, is just kind of push my ball guide up to see kind of, where I am, depending on what kind of power ball that I'm using. So that pretty much covers that shot, but let's talk about the adjustments here. So here's a headwind, here's a tailwind, and here's a side wind. So with the headwind case, you're going to want to go, let me switch back here. So we keep the colors in line for this shot. So with the headwind case, I'm going to go at least max plus 30 minimum, with potential to be, as much as, as wind gets very large, as much as max plus 50 in this case. So it is going to be a substantial ring play that you need to play. If I get 14 miles in the face, for instance, and I need to go max plus, 50, for instance, that's going to make the shot very challenging. You got to make sure that you have the rings to accommodate for that. And if the wind gets up that large, aiming for this spot becomes that much tougher. So what I'll try to do usually is I might try to, change my landing zone. And ideally, I'm going to have, hopefully enough backspin to be able to, land kind of right in towards here, which you might need to do. So I will kind of talk about that case briefly if need be. For this tailwind, we're pretty much going to use max plus 20%. And same with the side. It's pretty much isolated to max plus 20% for this shot. So, your normal ring adjustment, whatever the max number is, add 20% to it, and you should be pretty good. And that's to accommodate for kind of a lower elevation. You're hitting down to a lower target here. So let's talk about the next shot. I do want to just talk about it just briefly. This is going to be a very, very tough one. This is still the driver case. And, you need kind of at least 4, 5 backspin. So kind of the least that you'll be able to kind of get away with this would be kind of a full backspin extra mile. Or similarly, a POC 5 or higher. So I can kind of put in these cases right here as kind of where you would kind of shoot for this. And, this would come into play if you have a small power ball on and it's a headwind and you can't get it to the spot that you want. So this is more of a headwind shot. So that's kind of what I'm going to kind of isolate this to. And, we can pretty much just, throw on max here. We're going to basically treat those clubs as they only have 4 potential, with the exception of extra mile 6. So what you can actually do with extra mile 6, once you get that high of a backspin, you can actually move this line up to say here, which is very similar height to here. So you can see that these have the same kind of heights as one another. This is also a headwind only shot for the most part. I mean, you could get away with it with, Thor 7, Thor 6, or Rocket, but that's pretty much it. So it's very, very tough to get this case to where you can actually play it off the front of the fairway right in front of this bunker here. But you can see how the heights are similar, which means these ring adjustments will be similar. And with this one, you know, you might just want to take basically 10% off of all these numbers. So whatever I would have done here, you know, if I was, you know, if this wind said max plus 20 here, then I might only need to do max plus 10 here, for instance. And again, you know, you'll have to kind of land right in the front of this bunker and just kind of crank your backspin up as much as you can and just hope to be able to stop the ball. The hardest part here is you might not be able to start your target line where you want. So you might have to, you know, imagine 2 or 3 rings below min. And that's kind of the hardest part for the shot. So what you'll want to do is you'll want to set your ball guide up with your wood. So for instance, you know, let me just give you an example wind here. You know, let's just say wind's coming down in this direction. So I might take my wood and set up my spin and my ball guide offset. You know, maybe I'll just have pointed out here towards the right of the hole a little bit and going through just a little bit. Keep in mind when you club up to the, you know, wood, you'll probably want to have that 4 backspin on, but that's what you'll want to see with the ball guide. And then you can kind of mimic that side spin and landing zone and just try to basically visualize and say, okay, I've already gone 3 rings. Now I only need to go 6 rings, for instance, beyond there, depending on how many rings, you know, it's suggested that you go. And if you can, you know, kind of visualize that very well and land on that target, you know, using this offset technique with the wood, your driver should also follow suit that it goes. So, you know, that's pretty much going to dictate how well you represented the shot is, does the ball guide roll out how you anticipated it would? So that pretty much covers that. Let's talk about this wood case here, because there is going to be an alternate case here with the woods. So with the woods, in terms of priority, what I would probably kind of rank, and, you know, from the 3rd tee box, I'm going to assume that you guys probably have, you know, kind of the longest possible and kind of most upgraded. So a hammerhead 6 or 7 is probably going to have highest precedence. The only reason sniper is going to kind of fall down the list a little bit here is because of range, how important range is for this shot. Really, Guardian 8 or Guardian 6, I think Guardian 6 is the minimum that you need to really have that 175-ish number. It's a little bit longer than Sniper. And that having that extra 3 yards can actually come into play because it actually makes it easier for you to set this up. If you have to set up back here with Sniper, especially if you bring a katana, for instance, that's going to make things significantly a little bit tougher on you, even with the extended ball guide. So Sniper is going to kind of fall down here, and hopefully you have a Sniper 10. Sniper 8 is probably the minimum that you'll probably want for this shot. And then, you know, lastly, I will, you know, just kind of put kind of Cat 6 at least minimum down here towards the bottom. However, you know, do keep in mind, even though it's ranked as the lowest, you can still get beat by this club. So you do have to keep that in mind. You know, and it doesn't have to be a Cat 6. I would even say a Cat 5. You know, the better, 5, 6, or 7. It's just going to give you more accuracy, make the shot that much easier. So let's just briefly talk about the shot here. So what it typically you want to do is kind of land it right around here. And then you'll just kind of roll it out this way. And it will be, you know, very close towards max. And because of that fact, you know, that you are pretty much extended towards max. You know, what I typically use here for the side and tailwind case was about max plus 30, give or take. It's kind of my base cases here. And with the headwind shot, it's almost not going to be even possible. So I'll kind of leave that off of the headwind shot. And you'll see that I'll just throw in the max plus 30 case for this side and tailwind. And in terms of spin, it's really going to be, you know, dependent upon how much, you know, how you manipulate your landing zone a little bit. But I would say, you know, somewhere between, you know, 4, and for the tailwind, kind of start to crank it up towards 5, give or take. But again, you know, this is going to be highly dependent upon where you set up your, so, you know, just be sure to offset your guide, you know, like this example that I had where I have this purple guide off this, you know, how I'm offsetting, you know, that's how you're going to win this shootout. Whoever offsets the best, and then the wind effect plays. And you got to keep in mind, you're shooting down to a lower target. So, you know, if I have this wind, for instance, you know, I'm going to make sure that my ball guide's offset into somewhere into the middle of the green, because it's going to deflect at least, you know, 4 or 5 yards minimum towards the left in this case. And the stronger that wind points towards the left, the more that it affects. You might even have to, you know, start to move it an extra yard or two, depending on how strong that gets, and alternatively the other way. So you'll have to curl as well. And that's, you know, just something that you need to be thinking about. In terms of, you know, down here with this rough bump shot, for the basic left to right case, you know, this case going over this way for this rough bump, you probably don't need any curl at all. However, when you get this wind, you could need as much as half curl. So if this is my ball circle here, you know, I might need to curl as much as here. So that's just something that you'll have to think about for that shot. For these other shots, the best advice I could say is you might just want to, you know, either A, offset that ball guide, or B, you'll just want to kind of counter against the wind. So if the wind's pointed right, you can just kind of counter curl left. Alternatively, you can just offset the ball guide. So you'll need to do 1 or 2 of them. And again, you know, practice and learning from your mistakes is going to be your biggest secret to success on this hole. So good luck with that. Hopefully, you know, you guys are able to master this hole from, you know, a very tough tee box. This is definitely the hardest of the bunch. So good luck, and see you guys on the next one.